When people talk about the downfall of zombies, Black Ops 4 generally takes the most heat. But I think that Black Ops 4 is more the product of the direction that the game mode was heading in, and not so much the actual root cause of the downfall itself. To find what the real cause was, we actually have to turn to the much beloved Black Ops 3. Now, the period of zombies from World at War all the way up until Black Ops 2 saw a lot of evolution. But one thing that always remained the same was the overarching theme that was the lack of control you had over the game. And what I mean by this is things like the following. You have to start on round 1, you have to start with the starting pistol, and there's no way to shortcut opening the map and getting set up. Basically, you are at the mercy of the game mode, which means that there is not a lot of variety in terms of how you play. I mean, sure, everyone's got their own strategy, but you've still got to work for everything. There are minimal to no shortcuts, which does get a little boring after a while. So to counteract this, it was important to innovate and make each map unique in its own right. Whether it be Easter eggs, new map dynamics, pack-a-punch quests, just something to make the map stand out. Which is what allowed zombies to evolve as much as it did. I mean, just take a look at the difference between Nocturne Toten and Origins. They're almost two completely different games, and yet are only about 4 or 5 years apart. But that would all change with the release of Black Ops 3. With Black Ops 3 zombies, for the first time, we now had the ability to customize weapons and spawn in with loadouts. And that was thanks to the release of Gobble Gums. But the thing is about Gobble Gums, when they first came out, they weren't the overpowered ability that we have come to know today. In fact, they felt like more of a fun side accessory that might be able to provide you a bit of help here and there, but weren't ultimately game breaking. And the focus was certainly more on the maps themselves. I mean, sure, we had Perkaholic right from the beginning, but even that felt like more of a treat than a common feature in a zombies game. And that's more or less how I think Gobble Gums were meant to be. Something that might provide some assistance here or there, or just something to play around and have fun with. And I think the perfect example of this can be found in those myth-busting series made by many YouTubers like Codename Pizza, where they just sort of play around with and test different random theories with Gobble Gums. Which I think is the perfect addition to a game of zombies. I mean, you've got the maps themselves to enjoy, but now you've also got this extra thing to play around with, even if they get a little too boring as well. But the problem is about things like Gobble Gums is that they are a very slippery slope. It doesn't take much before people start finding exploits or the so-called meta when it comes to these things. And as we got further and further into the DLC season of Black Ops 3, more and more powerful Gobble Gums started to get released, until they just decided to completely open the floodgates, where now we have some of the most overpowered and ridiculous Gobble Gums you could ever come up with. And they are now frequently relied upon, especially for Easter eggs. Which I think is really not a good thing, because instead of experiencing all the unique features and challenges that a map has, you can just blitz right through them, which takes away from the uniqueness of each map and places more focus on strategizing what Gobble Gum that you're going to use, instead of how you're going to navigate the map itself. Fortunately for Black Ops 3, however, the amazing maps and mechanics of the game, as well as the fact that everyone seems to look at Black Ops 3 through rose-tinted glasses, I think meant that these issues weren't exactly obvious at the time. But that's where Black Ops 4 comes in. Because now with people's interest seeming to be a lot higher on things like Gobble Gums and loadouts, what I like to think of as accessories within the game, I feel caused a lot of Treyarch's creative energy to be diverted away from the maps themselves and placed more on these accessory items within the game. Which is why with Black Ops 4 we now have specialists, we can now spawn in with something other than the starting pistol, and why we saw the removal of crutch perks like Juggernog. Because what's the difference between spawning in with Juggernog already in Black Ops 4 and popping a round 1 perkaholic on Black Ops 3? There really is none. So why even bother putting Juggernog in the game? We seem to be perfectly happy popping a perkaholic on round 1 in Black Ops 3, so surely we'd be perfectly fine just spawning in with it on Black Ops 4. In fact, it's one less step. Which is why I don't think all these things like the removal of Juggernog and crutch perks in Black Ops 4 was really the issue with the game. It was the overarching theme of putting more onus on these accessory things instead of the maps themselves. I mean, at Black Ops 4 launch, apart from 9, we got 3 quite frankly lackluster maps, which really had no right at all to be that bad. Not to mention as well just the overall mechanics of Black Ops 4 being much worse, as well as the downgraded point system as well. But I mean, surely nobody would care about that. We have loadouts now. And to be honest, I just think it got worse in Cold War. Sure, Cold War's mechanics are great, but to be honest, I don't think you could make a more boring and uninteresting set of maps if you tried. But at the same time, look at all these new accessories we got. Perk tiers, creator class, new specialist. I mean, the list just goes on. So I mean, who cares about the maps? We have all these new things to play around with. And you know, they may be great at first, but these accessory things suffer from the same thing that the maps themselves do. They pretty quickly become boring and uninteresting. But what's different about these compared to maps is that we only get one version before the next game comes out. Whereas with maps, we get 5 or 6 per game. So now instead of waiting until the next map for a brand new experience, we now have to wait for the next game entirely. Because now the maps themselves don't seem to change much at all. You know, I posed the observation before on the difference between Noctua Untoten and Origins. And now I'm going to ask you the same question, except for Shadows of Evil and Forsaken from Cold War. With essentially the same amount of maps in between the two, in fact I think a little bit more actually, how much has zombies evolved from Shadows of Evil to Forsaken? None. In fact, I would say it's actually gone backwards. The maps have barely changed at all. All it seems now is that every new map is just a reskin of the one to come before it. But what has changed are all these little accessory things we get to play around with before the game even starts. Now don't get me wrong, this is not to say that things like Gobble Gums and loadouts and weapon customization are all bad. I mean, personally, I like Gobble Gums just as much as the next guy. But I think putting so much focus on them and allowing them to become as important as what they are now was a mistake. Because it took away a lot of the creativity and importance of the maps themselves. Now, would it be fair to say that this is the sole cause of zombies going downhill? No, I mean there are plenty of other factors, as there always is. Things like awful point systems, bad marketing, bad game mechanics. I mean, you could make a list that goes on forever. But in saying that, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that the importance that was put on these things like Gobble Gums, weapon loadouts, customization, all these accessory things may have diverted the necessary attention away from these important factors in the game mode and meant they didn't get the focus and attention that they probably should have. Now before I end the video, there is actually a silver lining to all this, and that's the map Terminus. Currently the latest released zombies map, and I have to say, this seems like a step in the right direction. I mean, the map is actually the first one to catch my interest in a long time, which is saying something. It is quite unique in the way that it's got these little islands spread out that you're able to go out to and explore, something we've never seen before in a zombies map. And it's also just got that zombies feel to it as well, which I don't think we've had for a while either. So this is the sort of thing I would personally like to see more of, just more focus on making the maps unique and interesting themselves. Yes, have these extra things like Gobble Gums and loadouts, but make sure the maps do get the preferential treatment. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.